Good afternoon, everybody. Jim Williams here. Matt will be joining us very soon. A lot going on. We have college basketball tournaments. We have the World Baseball Classic. Um, and of course, we have spring training baseball. So there's much to speak about. Let's get right down to it. Let's talk a little bit about basketball specifically. Miami of Ohio. Now, for those of you who watch the show, you know that we feel Miami of Ohio certainly has earned a spot in the NCAA tournament. However, that may not happen. We have to see how that works out. Right now, as we know, going into the MAC tournament, Miami of Ohio was 31-0. Okay. They have been undefeated in 31 games. However, in the Mid-American Conference tournament, the Red Hawks, got bounced by UMass. UMass, of course, is an team that is outside the top 200 in the NET rankings. Miami's weak schedule and lack of major wins are a problem. They're 31-1 right now. And even the Red Hawks' schedule is not that easy, as evidenced by their solid position in wins above the bubble. A metric, by the way, on how the selection committee are going to take a look at the teams who they perceive to be on the bubble. Now, who could those teams be? Well, Indiana's one of them from the Big Ten. They lost to Northwestern in the Big Ten tournament on Wednesday night. Auburn, who, we don't believe should be in the tournament by any stretch of the imagination, blew a double-digit lead against Tennessee in the SEC tournament on Thursday night. Now, if Miami is ahead of both those teams, as I think they are, the Red Hawks should probably be in that field as of right now. However, as we all know, when you're doing bubble watch, you really don't know what the heck's going on, who's ahead of who at this point. There are no bid thieves left in the ACC, Big 12, or Big 10, but a few loom in other tournaments. Bubble teams hoping to get in, like Georgetown and Seton Hall. If Georgetown, or Seton Hall fail to win the Big East, or at least make it to the championship game, obviously UConn is the winner out there. They may not make the tournament. Mississippi and Oklahoma, if they can fall short in the SEC, maybe they don't make it. Utah State needs to win basically the Mountain West to get in. St. Louis is in the same boat. They're going to have to win the Atlantic 10. So there's a lot of possibilities at this point. So let's take a look at the last four in. According to ESPN, the last four in are VCU, Missouri, SMU, and Texas. USA Today has it as Santa Clara, VCU, SMU, and Miami of Ohio. First four out, ESPN has Oklahoma, Auburn, Indiana, New Mexico. USA Today has it New Mexico, Oklahoma, Auburn, and San Diego State. The automatic bids, here's the people who've already claimed a spot in the NCAA tournament, and that would be Long Island from the NEC, Tennessee State from the Ohio Valley Conference, Northern Iowa from the MVC, High Point from the Big South, Queens from the Atlantic Sun, North Dakota State from Summit, Troy State from the Sun Belt, Furman from the SoCon, Wright State from Horizon, Hofstra from the CAA, Siena from the other MAC, Gonzaga won the WCC championship, McNeese State in the Southland, Lehigh from the Patriot League, and Idaho from the Big Sky. Those are the teams that have already booked their part in the dance. A lot of action today in college basketball. Let's jump to the scoreboard here. Obviously, nothing has started yet, but we'll very soon be. As a matter of fact, we just got a tip in the Michigan-Ohio State game. And that game is a quarterfinal game. Michigan, obviously the number 3 seed in the tournament. They're up 7-2 right now in that game. At 1:00, it's Florida and Kentucky. That's a quarterfinal game. That's going to be on ESPN. So the 25-6 Florida Gators, who were last year's champions, are taking on 21-12 Kentucky. The Gators were 16-2 in the SEC. Kentucky was 10-8 in the SEC. So that's your 1:00 game on ESPN for for the SEC. For the Big Ten on the Big Ten Network, at 2:30, you got Wisconsin and Illinois. And let's see what we got with regard to after that. We got Tennessee and Vandy. That game's on ESPN. Again, it's the SEC tournament. Vanderbilt and Tennessee. St. John's and Seton Hall at 5:30 on Fox. Okay. So Fox has a couple of early games here on the big network today. Purdue in Big Ten action takes on Nebraska. That's an 11 and an 18. So those two top 20 teams. They're on the Big Ten Network at 6:30 over on ESPN. You got Iowa State and Arizona. That's going to be fun. That's on ESPN at 7:00. You got two top 10 teams facing each other in a Big 12. That game should be really a lot of fun to watch. So circle that one on your dance card. Just for right now, the games on ESPN are really going to be good, so just stay there for the day. Miami is taking on number 10 Virginia. That game is going to be played on ESPN2 tonight at 7:00. Also at 7:00, Ole Miss in Alabama. That's on the SEC network. Georgetown takes on UConn. That's a big game for G-Town. If they can get by and upset UConn, that would be big, but we don't know yet. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. Georgetown, as we said, potentially a bubble team, probably not going to make it. UConn is going to probably roll over the Hoyas tonight. So number 6 UConn taking on Georgetown. That game is at 8:00 on FS1. Let's drop over and see what's going on. Back to the Big Ten at 9:00. That's UCLA against Michigan State. Michigan State, the number 8 team in the country. Big game there in the Big Ten. That's on the Big Ten Network. Back to the Deuce in the ACC tournament. Semifinals, Clemson at Duke. Duke, of course, the number 1 team in the country. Then 9:30, we got 14th ranked Kansas and Houston taking on the semifinal game in the Big 12. Over on the SEC network at 9:30, you got Oklahoma and Arkansas. So that's what we got for today with regards to what's going on with the schedule, who's going to play who at what point in time. And we're going to be full of wonderful basketball all day long. So let's pop over to Major League Baseball. Let's get this afternoon. We'll wait till Matt to talk about the World Baseball Classic. This afternoon, here's your games that all of these games start at 105. Maybe the Grapefruit League 105. The Rays visit the Red Sox down at Fort Myers at JetBlue Park. The Phillies host the Orioles in Clearwater. That game is at 105. Another 105, which you can see as the game of the day on the MLB Network. The Braves host the Yankees down in Venice. Over in Dunedin, it's going to be the Blue Jays hosting the Twins. Then we move out west where the Athletics will take on the Padres. That's a 4:05 start. A 4:05 start also as the White Sox and the Cubs face each other over at Camelback Ranch. The Battle of Chicago going on in Phoenix. All right. Meanwhile, back over at Tempe's beautiful Diablo Stadium, the Angels are taking on the Guardians. That's a 4:10 start. Rangers Rockies. That's also a 4:10 start. That game can be seen on the network, which is basically MLB Network. Brewers Athletics at 4:10. Mets Nationals. That game is 6:05 start this evening as we get some night games here. The Tigers over at Joker Marchant Stadium in Lakeland host the Pirates. That's a game that gets underway at 6:05. Also 6:05, the Astros Cardinals. Then at 6:10, the Mets and the Marlins. 7:05, the Giants host the Reds in Scottsdale. The Diamondbacks and Royals play each other at 9:05. That game is, of course, at Sunrise Stadium out in the Phoenix area. Then at Goodyear Ballpark, it's the Reds and the Giants at 9:05. And finally, the Dodgers and the Mariners taking on each other in Peoria Stadium in Peoria, Arizona. That game is a 9:10 start. All right. Matthew has joined us, and we will put him in just a second. There you go. Hey, Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good.
I was just going through a couple of things. One, the potential situation with Miami of Ohio, where they are right now 31-1. They're for the moment. I think they're in the tournament. Whether or not they can hold that spot, I don't know. But right now, I think they're in the NCAA tournament. I went through the list of games we have this afternoon and early in this evening. So there's a lot going on today. I do, Auburn, of course, choked, so they're not. I don't think they're going to be in the tournament.
Yeah, it feels like one of those situations where, especially the optics of the loss that Auburn took
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, giving up that 21-2 run late, and really what was a tournament game where you had a lot of the control over where your season was headed for Auburn, with the result that had already been final. With that Miami of Ohio game, you kind of knew what was in front of you if you were Auburn, and you had a pretty good grasp on the game and let it slip out of your hands. It's not good optics for them. And really, when you look at it too, on the other side, it's even worse optics for, I would say, the selection committee.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at that team, and I get that it's MAC basketball, and their non-conference wasn't good, and they didn't play any quad one games. But still, when a team goes 31-0 to have an undefeated regular season, you really have deserve a spot in your postseason format, because it's extremely hard to do regardless of the level of basketball that you've played.
No, they can play our Sisters of the Poor, and look, you can downplay, and I'm not saying you specifically. The selection committee can downplay the MAC. All right, that's fine. But at the same time, I don't want to see 9 SEC or ACC or Big Ten teams because they don't deserve it either.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not an Auburn team that when you've watched them play basketball, you've looked at it and gone,
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be different if you watched this team throughout the back half of the season. You said, man, they've gotten better as the year's gone on.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't really. They've shown spots. Obviously, that win at Florida is probably the best win in college basketball this season.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just not. It has not been a good body of work, and it hasn't been a body of work that when you're trying to make a late push towards the end of the year, where it looks like they've been scaling upwards. Instead, it feels like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they've got their highs, they've got their lows, but you don't get a consistent product out of Auburn basketball throughout this season. And when you are putting that up against a team that was 31-0, and obviously
Mm-hmm.
they did suffer that loss, I think you're better off taking the chance on that mid-major school, because at that point you're just loading down the tournament with teams that you believe to be better than others.
Well, there's what I think that the search committee should at times reward a team for their effort. Okay. Yeah, you say, okay, there's no such, we don't want any
Yeah.
participation trophies. I'm not saying that. Okay.
Oh,
I'm saying 31-1
well,
puts you in the damn tournament over some of these teams that they're even considering.
yeah, and it's a situation where when you have a field of 68 teams, it's not. it's not something. This isn't the college football playoff. Like you're not
No.
splitting hairs. Like I don't think there's a world where this Auburn basketball team can go out and win a national championship this year. I just
Mm-mm.
don't think it's in the cards. So when you're doing that, now we've got to look more towards your entertainment value. And that in Miami of Ohio provides you a better storyline and better entertainment value overall than Auburn does.
Mm-hmm. It's like it's not. They can't help who they play. Okay, we're talking about Miami of Ohio right now.
Hmm.
Could they schedule better teams? They could. Are better teams out there wanting to play them? Evidently not, because they scheduled what they scheduled. So 31-1. Yeah, they lost to UMass. Yes, it was in the quarterfinals of the tournament. I get it all. But no question in my mind that they, based on what they did in the regular season, you got 68 spots, put them in the damn tournament. Let them
Yeah.
prove that they don't deserve there. Don't
Yeah,
you take,
absolutely.
and that's the thing that I get upset about is that, these guys who are on the selection committee, by the way, who are basically the power conferences pushing to get more money out of the deal, um, keep pushing, well, we'll take the seventh team in the Big Ten. Well, how do you know the seventh team in the Big Ten is any better or worse than Miami of Ohio? You don't.
Yeah, and
So you're
I think
rewarding mediocrity.
yeah, I think from a coach's perspective, just in terms of the matchups. If you asked me if I wanted to play Miami of Ohio tomorrow or I wanted to play Auburn tomorrow, I would probably rather play Auburn than Miami of Ohio. And it's not because I think that maybe Miami of Ohio talent wise is better, but
Mhm.
there's a lot that goes into to kind of the mental side of things. Like when you line them up, maybe you think like, oh, it's just Miami of Ohio. Like they're not going to be as focused on that
Mhm.
matchup, and they still play what really is a much more sound and fundamental brand of basketball than what Auburn's played this year.
Mhm. Well, it, I've watched a couple of Miami of Ohio games, and they're what you typically expect a mid-major team to be. Okay, a successful mid-major team. They play like a team. That's number one. Number two, they don't beat themselves. Okay, they rebound well. They get on the break. They play defense. They basically play just what you said. They play fundamental basketball, and they don't make mistakes. So I can't say the same thing about Auburn. I can't say the same thing about Indiana. I can't say the same thing about hell, even San Diego State, who is supposedly got a pretty decent team this year. It's I just the sixth or seventh team in some of these power conferences are getting in just because it's the conference and not because of they earned it.
Yeah, and I think that's a dangerous thought process for this tournament going forward because now you are in an era where it's NIL, and as it's been talked about before, like the hired gun type
Mhm.
mentality is, yeah, talent wise on paper, Auburn's better, but I don't think they really know how to play good team basketball that's going to be, good for a postseason format. I just don't think that's possible, and I think that's kind of where you get caught up in these backside of the selection process where you're letting some of these lower level teams in where it is more of a hired gun mentality instead of that more team mindset of basketball that you're getting at a lot
Mhm.
more of these mid majors.
Yeah, and you're getting three or four guys to come in, and as you say, they're the hired guns. They don't necessarily. It's not even that they even want to play team basketball. They're just like launching threes, or basically from a standpoint of the cohesion of what your roster's like. You know, we'll see. I mean, let's roll the ball out there and let them play. And if they get beat by 100 points, well, then they shouldn't. They didn't deserve being there.
Yeah.
But if on the
I
other hand
mean,
they knock out a couple of people, then you know what? They deserve to be
yeah, and I think you got a really good example of that, honestly, last night. Because there was a game, the game that I was watching, when Georgia and Ole Miss were playing, and you had Ole Miss up by 20 some odd. I think they were up 23 points at one point,
there.
and Georgia went on a run and cut it down to 3 points.
Wow.
and they cut it down to 3 points with about 4 minutes left in that basketball game.
Hmm.
But the problem was is that they didn't change their thought process. They didn't change the way they played.
Hmm.
The way that team worked is they didn't work as a team. They still
Hmm.
continued to maintain the we're going to run down and somebody's going to pull a transition three for the next
Right.
4 minutes of basketball. And it wasn't sound. They weren't running plays. It wasn't good
Hmm.
team basketball. And ultimately, Ole Miss was able to pull back away really
Hmm.
in those 4 minutes and come away with the win. All because they weren't able to feel the moment and change their mindset and
Right.
continue to change back into more of the team brand of basketball. Even though I get that's what had got them back into the game.
I'll tell you what surprises me about Georgia is Mike White is a good coach of team basketball.
Yeah,
So that surprises me that, and I've watched Georgia play this year, and it's not a typical Georgia team. They're just god awful,
yeah,
and they got more talent on that team that they shouldn't be god awful.
yeah, yeah. And I mean they've had highs and lows throughout the season. I mean
Hmm.
the highs have been good for them. They've gotten some really good wins,
Right.
but when the lows happen, it's you're losing these inexplicable basketball games to an Ole Miss team that I know they played better
Hmm.
towards the back half of the year. You know, talking in terms of the way I was talking about Auburn, that Ole Miss's path is the path they would have needed to be on if they were going to have a legitimate argument for the tournament. But Ole Miss has played well in the latter half of the year. They've gotten a little bit better, but still, it's not a basketball team that has the same level of talent that Georgia should have lost to last night. I mean, they're probably going to go in, and I would be nothing short of shocked if they beat Alabama today.
The uh, on the converse side, the other way with it, Coach Golden at Florida, they lost to Arizona early. They
Hmm.
they played a brutal early schedule, but they kept getting better
Yeah,
as a team. And that was Golden making sure, all right, I know I've got guys here who are coming from other places, but eventually we've got to play as a team. And he kept that preaching that mantra to them, and eventually they did. If you remember, in the early part of the season, the Florida guards were terrible. They were
hmm
getting all their scoring on the front line,
yeah,
which they might have the best front line in college basketball. But
yeah,
you're not going to win anything if you don't get good guard play.
yeah.
And
And
so as they progressed and got more mature and became more of a cohesive unit, the guard play got much better.
yeah, the guard play got better, and their defense continued to improve throughout the
Hmm.
year. That was a big piece of it for them because
Hmm.
as good as important as it is to play offense, defense, you have to have good communication, and you
Right.
have to be a team on the defensive side of the floor. It's just not going to work out for you if you're not able to communicate on that side of the floor. And
We,
so they communicated better. And you're right; those guards they've gotten more confidence. They've played, and now they're becoming much more of the scoring type as
mhm.
what they were really brought in to be.
Right. And they I think that they peaked at the right time. They realized what they needed to do. Now, will they come in and win another back championship? Who knows? All right, I don't. But I do think that um, there are teams. Houston had a good situation where they had a lull and they started playing good basketball again. I think the Big 12 is going to have some crazy games out there. In the next couple days. The ACC, how good is Duke? We're going to find out. Uh, not too not too distant future. It's going to be a little bit later today. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. Michigan's got going to be challenged. This is good, tournament time practice for those teams who feel as if they can go make a deep run into the tournament, potentially even win a national championship.
Yeah, and I think there's two ways to look at that Duke result from last night. You can look at
Mhm.
it in the result of they showed their weakness, or you can look at it from the other side and say, well, they found resolve and a way to win, and in a
Mhm.
game where they kept it tight. Like that would maybe give you a little hope if you're John Shire and that team. because you haven't gotten that many close opportunities throughout the process of the season. You've been better than most of the teams, and throughout the grind of a regular season, that shows. But in this tournament format, it's one game and go home, and so you're getting everybody's best shot every single time. And they got the best shot Florida State had last night, with the exception of that last one, which I was not a fan of that look that they had for the win.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I was surprised that Florida State played that well.
Yeah.
Because this has really been an up and down Florida State team this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Florida State team. We just finished talking about how up and down and bad Georgia's been. This is a team that Georgia went down to Tallahassee early in the year, and they beat them by 20. So it's been an up and down year for Florida State for sure, and a team that you would not have expected to be in a position where they could have beat Duke, but they came out and they gave it their best, and it does show that with the way college basketball is and the talent dispersion is that when you get somebody's best shot, they can beat you anytime you tip the
ball. I spoke to a friend of mine who is a crazy FSU fan. And I asked him about the basketball team. He said, "Thank God we've got Mike Norvell."
That's a sad state of affairs if that's who you're turning to.
Well, he's talking about the fact that actually the reason what he's saying is, all that the Florida State alumni and fans can talk about these days is how Mike Norvell is screwing up. So they're overlooking the fact that the basketball team's playing terrible. So basically, a shout out to Mike Norvell for helping out his, the FSU basketball team.
Yeah, and that's just their basketball team it was a program that not too long ago was in a really good spot. If I remember correctly, I think they were one of the favorites to win the national championship back in that 2020 COVID season.
Yeah, they've had some good basketball teams.
Yeah, they're not that far removed from good times in basketball, but they've taken a fall far from grace.
Way back when, and we're talking way back when, Florida State's basketball team was known, far stronger than their football program. This is before Bobby Bowden got there. And the funny thing is, the coach of the team, Durham, when got into a bit of a sticky thing with the athletic department, they were mad at each other. I mean, it wasn't nothing. He didn't do anything terrible. I'm not saying that. They got on each other's nerves to the point where they didn't want to. By the way, they played UCLA for a national championship game back in the day with Hugh Durham. And so Hugh Durham, by the way, ended up at Georgia as head coach of their basketball team and played, was a pretty decent coach over there. So, yeah, they've had basketball, some really good basketball teams. And, but as of late, not so much. So we'll see how that goes. So got some World Baseball Classic power rankings just came out. You want to see what we got?
Sure.
All right. Last week, they were at number 3. They're now number 1, the Dominican Republic. The guy who is the hottest player on the Dominican is Fernando Tatis Jr. He's 6 for 13, 2 home runs, 5 walks, and 9 RBIs. And they are perfect 4-0 in pool play.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you would expect that just based off, I mean, how well they have hit 1 through 9. It's really what you envisioned with this lineup the last time we played this tournament. That was kind of the thought process. I think everybody was surprised with their early exit the last World Baseball Classic. This is much more what they had envisioned, this lineup, and really the 1 through 9 power that they are able to field.
They got Vladdy has got 6 hits, 2 home runs. Juan Soto, 2 home runs, 5 walks. And then pitcher, Brayan Bello who has given up 1 run, 7 strikeouts in 5 innings. So,
Well, interesting note on Brayan Bello. He actually, and I don't know the reason for this, but he has returned to Red Sox camp. I'm not sure the reason for that, but he is supposedly no longer with the Dominican team.
yeah, he told them he could play through the first, get them to the knockout round,
Okay.
but he was going back to the Red Sox because there were some things that the Red Sox organization, when I say the organization, I'm talking probably the pitching coach and all that. There were some things they wanted to work on, and they, it's really. I mean, on one hand, yes, you want to help your country, and there's no question about that. On the other hand, you can't overlook the fact that you still have a baseball season to play.
Yeah, yeah, and it's something that Andrew Bailey has taken a lot of pride and put a
Mm-hmm.
lot in to some of these younger arms that they've acquired over the years.
Right.
He's been working with Johan Oviedo, who they acquired this offseason, and he worked with guys last year. He's really improved a lot of what they did. I mean, Lucas Giolito had a bit of a resurgence last
Mm-hmm.
year after he was kind of left for dead, and that came from some of the
Mm-hmm.
philosophy that Andrew Bailey's had.
Number 2 on the list shouldn't surprise anybody. They were number 1 last week, Japan. Their designated hitter, Shohan Otani, is the best player so far on the team. 5 for 9, 2 home runs, 4 walks, 6 RBI. Did you guess there might be anybody else on that the Japanese team would be better than Otani?
No, but they are going to personify good team baseball throughout this World Baseball Classic. I would be nothing short of shocked given the side of the bracket that they're on,
Mm-hmm.
if they did not make the finals.
So we got the U.S., who was number 2 last week. They're number 3 this week. Their star player so far is Paul Skeens. That shouldn't surprise anybody. 4 innings pitched, given up 1 hit, struck out 7, walked a batter. So there you go. He pitched in that 5-3 win over Mexico on Monday. Skeens tossed 4 scoreless innings in his WBC debut. And so we'll see how that works out with him still around, at least for the knockout round of the
Yeah,
tournament.
yeah, and that's one where you lose Tarek Skubal, and it's a big plus to still have Paul Skeens on the roster because you have got the guy that you want to go. Really, really, when you're looking at the
Mm-hmm.
way the bracket shakes, is ideally you would have somebody other than Paul Skeens go in this first game against
Mm-hmm.
Canada, and then have Skeens waiting for that potential start against the Dominican Republic.
Right. I do think it's been very unfair. So much that had been made of Terence Skubal not playing again in the World Baseball Classic. There have been some really nasty things said about him not being a team player, not wanting to play for his country, being unpatriotic. I mean, they blame this poor guy for everything, and it's not uncommon. And all you have to do is go back, boys and girls, and take a look at the World Baseball Classic in the past. That guys who are in walk years, which is what Scooble is in, and guys who play on teams who have ambitions of being in the playoffs and maybe going beyond, as they do in Detroit, that they're going to want that guy in camp to try to make sure that he's ready to rock and roll when the season begins. And they don't feel that playing the World Baseball Classic is the way for him to get ready. They'd rather him be in Lakeland with them over at Joker Marchant and playing with the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah,
That's
which
not necessarily his fault.
yeah, I think from the Tigers side, I understand the element of like you feel like you're in control when
Mm-hmm.
Tarek Skubal is back in camp with you. But in terms of when you look at it from, excuse me, purely a competition aspect,
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand rather having him play against what are still some very incomplete
Mhm.
lineups and rosters in spring training, as opposed to going against, potentially the Dominican Republic in the
Right.
World Baseball Classic. You would think that in terms of getting ready for the season, going against the best on a big stage would provide you a better launching pad for your season.
I don't think it's that. I think you're right that, if he excelled against a Venezuela or a Dominican Republic, that would be fantastic. I think what they more than anything, um, especially pitchers, if you when you go to camp, right, when you're there every
Hmm.
day and you sit around and you talk to baseball guys and there's really nothing for people like you and I, baseball heads who like baseball, to be there and actually be able to cover spring training because it's so relaxed and everything. But you really want, I mean, the coaches. That's the time coaches spend really getting to have some fun with the players, to get to really build up. What I get to see him pitch every day. He practices throwing just to keep hot. Now, there's a scenario where Skeens could go pitch a game in Lakeland and still come back and pitch the final
Yeah,
in the WBC.
yeah, which
I don't
is
know that that's part of the plan, but I do know that the scenario is because the championship game is 9 days before opening day. So if he
yeah,
pitches 9 days before opening day, he can still pitch opening day.
yeah, and I mean, I was just going to go back to what you're talking about with Scooble and how what the advantages are for the Tigers bringing him back to camp, and you also have a roster or a starting rotation that's adding two new guys this year. They're bringing in two new pieces and
Mhm.
having your number one in camp with them for the final stretch of spring training is good for kind of building a little bit of that chemistry and camaraderie. Especially when, I mean, let's be honest, like there's going to be some concerns in terms of who he is more in the dugout with Framber Valdez. I
Mhm.
don't think that's something that can be overlooked based off what
Mhm.
happened last year with him and his catcher in Houston.
Right.
So you have that, and then Justin Verlander's there. I know he was on the Tigers before, but his prior experience doesn't really play into
Mhm.
how they'll necessarily welcome him. But he's a veteran that's been at one of the best pitcher in baseball at different points in his career.
Right.
So you're not really concerned as much about him, but it is something where you want them to kind of get acclimated and have a feel for each other and get a little bit of continuity in that rotation.
There's another thing that happens during spring training, especially with guys like Verlander and Skugel and Paul Skeens and those kind of guys. All the young pitchers that are in your farm system,
Hmm.
they stand there and just watch. you know, and then what'll happen is when it's their turn to pitch, the young guys, they'll ask Verlander or they'll ask Scuba, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And I mean, you don't get to do that during the season. You don't have the luxury of walking over and spending 5 or 10 minutes getting Justin Verlander give you instructions on your pitch.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really valuable experience for those younger guys they have on that roster.
Hmm. Okay, Venezuela was last week 4. They stayed the same place. Luis Arcarez, 7 for 14, so he's hitting 500. 2 home runs, 4 doubles, and 9 RBIs.
I do think it's funny when you look at Luis Arias and
Hmm.
what the offers that he fetched in free agency. He's a guy that's been hitting up around that 300 level pretty consistently over the past 5 years. You know what kind of bat you're getting, but he's not been known for his pop. He's been a lot of
Hmm.
singles. He's been pretty short through the zone, so he
Hmm.
makes a lot of really good contact, but he's just not hitting for power. Well, in the
Right.
World Baseball Classic, that's completely flipped the script. As you said, 6 extra base
Mhm.
hits, 2 homers. It's been really impressive, and honestly, confusing as to where this random power surge came from Luis Ariz.
Yeah. Number 5, they jumped the biggest leap of anybody. Shouldn't surprise anybody. They were 12th last week. Was Team Italy. And they're led by first baseman, my cousin Vinny. 3 home runs and 3 extra base hits. So, Vinny's been up the pop. I gotta believe. I mean, look, I don't know who had Italy at 4-0 in pool play on their bingo card, but they've played really solid baseball.
Yeah, they have. I think the only reason that they're sitting where they are in these power rankings is they are still power rankings. And when you look at the lineup overall compared to those teams that are in front of them, they don't have as complete of a lineup. They don't have the same high level MLB talent that some of those other ones have. But they have just played some really good baseball in that pool play. And luckily for them, the power rankings don't matter when they go out there and play.
Puerto Rico is in your number 6 spot. Once again, they did not move. And basically, this is a team that is relatively unknown. They've got a few names out there, but it's very much a minor league baseball team with a lot of young players that seem to be playing, above their pay grade.
Yeah, and for Puerto Rico, it's surprising because they're missing some of the star talent that they had available to them. Obviously, Francisco Lindor being the biggest name given given his contract situation or given his insurance situation and his inability to play this year.
Korea stays in their position, which is number 7. Their star first baseman Bo Jin-moon, who's 7 for 13 with 2 home runs and 11 RBIs. Wow, he's a machine. Leads the team. Korea, kind of like we just mentioned Puerto Rico, making it with predominantly guys who are in the KBO.
Yeah, and it's one thing where we're really going to get to see the talent difference between these different leagues of baseball and how close they can be. Because if teams like Puerto Rico and Korea continue to play this well and they beat some of these teams that have that higher major league level talent, then it's going to raise some eyebrows about really how we look at some of those leagues.
Let me ask you a quick question about this. Canada, by the way, is the 8th seed on the docket there in the power rankings, and the U.S. plays Canada tonight. That game is on Fox at 8:00. By the way, the Dominican and Korea can be seen on FS1 at 6:30. I'm sorry, FS2 6:30 tonight. The Dominican Republic and Korea, U.S. and Canada. That game is on Fox tonight. There are players in the World Baseball Classic from these other countries that, especially Korea and we know Japan, occasionally from the Dominican, occasionally from some of the others, but mostly those teams that people, even scouts knew about them. Maybe they heard about them. I mean, it's not like they get to see a lot of them. So, have you seen anybody who you think might be a breakout star that nobody really saw coming from on these rosters?
I'd be lying if I said I was all that familiar with some of these lower level guys and really where they played. But on Team Italy, I think is the team that's had the best talent that has not been major league level, and I think that proved out through their play in pool play. Because I mean, you've got guys that sound like they're going to be cooking me my chicken parm at the Italian restaurant tonight that are just hitting tanks off of everybody. I mean, they call up. Now, granted, it's not the same, but they called up Mickey Gasper, who's really like a AAA Red Sox guy, is like
Right.
a gap filler because they lost Kyle Teel. Like they've
Hmm.
lost some of their major league talent, and they've still
Hmm.
maintained their level of play. So the guys they've had that have been, I guess you would call them more roster fillers because
Hmm.
they weren't able to fetch major league talent to those positions,
Right.
have been the best out of any group in the World Baseball Classic.
Hmm. And they have played like a team.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't. They've played phenomenal defense.
Yeah,
And
and
mhm,
their biggest star in Vinny Pasquantino. He
right,
didn't play all that well until that final game against Mexico where he hit
right,
3 homers.
right. And now Kansas City's probably going, all right, Vinny. It's like,
Yeah,
come when you come home, think Kauffman Stadium, baby. We want to see those balls jumping out of that ballpark. So,
absolutely.
that's what they want to see. Whether they'll see it or not, we'll let you know. Let me see if I can check the college basketball scoreboard here. Um, really, everything gets underway except for one game, not till 1 o'clock. But let's go back to Michigan, Ohio State. Let me refresh. That can't possibly be the score because it was almost the same score whenever I talked about it about a half an hour ago. No, it's at halftime, and it's 37-33 Michigan over Ohio State.
Well,
So that's a lot closer than I'm sure that Michigan feels comfortable with.
yeah, they're playing those closer games. It'll be interesting because we saw it with Duke last night and that scare with Florida
Mhm.
State. If Ohio State's able to come out and play a really good second half, also a team they're kind of sitting on that bubble line. I think they're considered in the last four in, but if they get that win, that would cement their spot in the NCAA tournament as well.
You
But it
talking about Ohio
also,
State?
yeah, yeah, but it also it shows it will prove more like because we've thought that Michigan and Duke and Arizona and these teams have
Mhm.
been really a significant level above the other competition, but it's going to continue proving out how much closer these margins are in these conference tournaments.
Yeah, and the other thing too um, would be it's not going to knock Michigan off the one line, okay,
No.
but it's definitely going to put a damper on where they fall. I mean, it's going to sound crazy. Okay, yeah, you get number one seeds are great, but if you're Michigan, there are certain places that you do not want to go, and and basically, the overall number one. I don't, I don't know. I don't think Duke's really the overall number one. I don't know that. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I just I've seen them play a lot. I like them. They're good, but Michigan not that much different. I don't think there's a Arizona. I mean, I don't know that there's a clear number one here.
Yeah, I think if any one of those three teams wins their conference tournament,
Hmm.
they would be the one seed.
And they
If
should, by the way, win
yeah,
their conference tournament.
yeah, if if they were to all three win them, then you're
Mhm.
going to have a much different discussion. But I have a sneaking suspicion that all three of those basketball teams are not going to win their conference tournaments.
Well, we have Florida too, so they have
Yeah,
Florida plays Kentucky at 1 o'clock.
yeah. Florida has the ability, if they go out and they win their conference tournament, they have a really, really, really good case to be a one seed again. They've never been a
Hmm.
one seed in back to back years. And
Hmm.
on the other end, another team that's been playing really well in their conference tournament, Iowa State. They
Hmm.
weren't far off of that one line headed into these tournaments. If they were to win the Big 12 title, then you're looking at a potential one seed there as well.
I think they play Arizona this afternoon, right?
If they do, that's pretty much the deciding game, I think, in the Big 12.
Let me look real quick and see what I can find out. Um,
Speaking of the Big 12, I did see today that the Big 12 had fielded a bunch of complaints about their glass floor, and they've now
oh
switched
yeah,
back to the hardwoods.
yeah. They that glass floor really looks nice, but it's not necessarily uh, the most forgiving when it comes to. It's like playing on
Yeah,
ice.
yeah. I was about to say it cannot be receptive to running all that well. The way that, because I mean, the wood kind of bends with your steps, and the glass doesn't have as much of the ability to do that. And also, again, like hardwood floors, yeah, when they get wet, they can get slick. I would probably rather have a wet hardwood floor though than a wet glass floor.
Yeah, and there used to be, by the way, it is the Big 12 game, Iowa State, Arizona, 7 o'clock tonight, ESPN, Shulman and Jay Billis on the call for that. You know, probably about a dozen years ago, they rolled out this composite court, right? Tennessee was the first to use it. And they hated it after about 5 games because the ball just bounced weird. It just because you're not getting that true bounce off the wood. You're just gonna like sometimes you're waiting for the ball to bounce up to your hand, and it's like boink. It only goes a little bit up. It wasn't really built for bouncing the ball for some reason. So they dumped that and went back to wood floors. So I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen again. We're not going to see that. So yeah, if you're a basketball fan, your game tonight is Iowa State and Arizona at 7 o'clock on ESPN. That looks like it could be a real treat to watch that game. And who else we got? I'm looking real quick here. The MAC semifinals. Georgetown, Connecticut. That's on FS1. Gus Johnson, Jim Jackson. Georgetown is the 11 seed, and Connecticut is the 1 seed in that tournament. I don't think Georgetown's going to be much of a battle for them. No. So anyway, I'm looking at the rest of the games tonight. Alabama, Ole Miss. I don't know. I don't think Alabama's going to lose that game.
No.
St. Louis and St. Joseph's and Davidson, the Atlantic 10. That's a 6-4 matchup. So I guess they're kind of tight. I don't know. I'm looking to see if there's anything worthy of watching. Arkansas, Oklahoma. That do anything for you? Not me.
Not particularly. Nigel Pack's played pretty well, but
here's one. Semifinal in the Big 12, ESPN 9:30, Kansas and Houston.
There we go. Yep, they're already down into
the Big 12
the semifinals.
Yeah, this is the Big 12. Yeah, this is a night to watch the Big 12. Because those 2 games right there, that's quality basketball right there.
Yeah,
you got
Duke and Clemson should be good as well.
That's true. That's on the Deuce. Dave O'Brien, the voice of the Boston Red Sox, and Duke and Clemson, and he's got Corey Alexander with him. So you can flick back and forth between ESPN and ESPN2 and watch some of the best basketball. Cal State, Fullerton, and Hawaii tonight. That's on the 11:30 for those of you who wish to stay up very late and watch that semifinal between Cal State, Fullerton, and Hawaii. And also New Mexico, San Diego State. That's a game. That's a midnight game. Wow. On CBS Sports Net. And the WAC semifinal, Utah Tech and California Baptist. That's on ESPN Plus. That's if you really. That starts at 12:30 tomorrow morning. So 12:30 a.m. So if you really have nothing to do and are a basketball fanatic, you got a game that's going to start after midnight. So good luck with that. Anyway, if you do, you need to get a life if you're watching that game, folks. Unless you're a graduate, So there you go. Your producer reminds you. Yes, as my producer reminds me, unless you're living on the West Coast, then it's not that late. Okay, true. Very good point, as always. So anyway, any other? We got to grab players leaderboard. Through 12 rounds, Straka is leading the show. Actually, he's tied with Corey Connors.
A couple of Georgia Bulldogs
10.
leading the
Yeah,
way at TPC right now.
there you go. Xander is in third spot. He's down. He's at 3 under. I'm sorry, 4 under for the tournament, 3 under for the day. He's on 10. Hodges is 1 under. Cameron Young is 1 other under. And that's the leaderboard up. At least that's the latest leaderboard we got so far.
Still have yet to get those afternoon tee times, those guys underway. Guys like Justin Thomas, Russell Henley. A couple of them shot 400 yesterday. We're sitting 1 off the lead when they concluded play yesterday.
We got Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas are both 4 under. They haven't started yet.
Yeah,
actually, Spieth just did start. So there you go. We got. We know that today's stick day. Tomorrow's moving day. So let's see how that works out. Any final thoughts before we get out of here on a Friday afternoon?
No, just one last note on the players is, and last I checked, the projected cut was sitting at 1 over par.
Oh man, that's that the course must be there must not be a lot of wind in Jacksonville.
No, the rain that they got yesterday, they got a little bit more rain throughout the afternoon yesterday, and it softened the greens up a little bit. They're a little bit more receptive today.
Okay, well, 1 over. That's a pretty awesome cut line.
Yeah, very generous.
Yeah, for sure. All right, everybody, y'all have a good weekend. We will see you on Monday. For Matt, I'm Jim. Take care.